Hey, you guys, this is Hannah Judson. Welcome to season 2 of the Hannah Judson Beat. The Hannah Judson Beat is a podcast that I started last year. I think it was in last October. It was sort of at the tail end of a record release I was working on. And it was a project I began kind of haphazardly. I was, we were in the middle of the pandemic and I was sort of just looking for things to do with conversations to have. And I invited a friend of mine to join me for a conversation online. I remember she was in Denver, Colorado somewhere. She was making a movie and I just asked her if she would join me for a conversation about her creative work. And she joined me. She was in her car. She was like, this is the only place I can get good reception. She was she was in the middle of filming. And we ended up talking about so many interesting things. We ended up talking about life and death and burials and crocheting your own casket and all sorts of things. And the conversation was so invigorating. That was my friend Diane Foster. She's a filmmaker and an actor and many other things. I just continued, and the next week I invited another friend and we had coffee and drinks, and I did that for a while informally. And by January 1st of this year, I launched a formal podcast because I realized I had a podcast. And so the focus of my podcast is talking to women. And I always think, I don't have to just limit it to women. I can talk to other people too, but there are so many amazing women to talk to. So that's so far been my focus. Talking to women about their creative work and their lives, where they are now, what they're working on, how they got there, what they're working on next, how they're managing the pandemic. There have been so many topics that have come up in my podcast that I've been just so grateful to my guests for bringing up. And there's even been sort of like a stream of consciousness through these different guests. We end up sort of wrapping around different topics from different angles. Today's amazing guest is Rachael Sage, and she's logging in from New York, which is, as you know, New York has just been hit and is in a state of emergency. She is still going to join this podcast, but I think this live stream conversation, but not right this minute. So I'm going to talk for a little bit and hopefully invite you, for those of you who are joining me right now, feel free to say hello in the chat area so I can see who's here. I'm going to talk a little bit. If you're willing, I'm going to interview you. I've got some things to say, and then as soon as I hear from Rachael, then we're going to launch another live stream. So that will be within the hour, but it's just going to be delayed a little bit. So delayed due to crazy weather. Are any of you experiencing crazy weather where you are right now? Feel free to let me know about your weather in the chat area. I'm always like super interested in weather, and it's kind of funny because weather's like a cliche, like, oh, you're just talking about the weather, but weather is super fascinating stuff because of the science of our earth, of the way it all goes down, the reasons why weather happens. And then also, hi, Alan. Nice to see you. I'm in my studio alone, as you know. Rachel's coming later, and I'm going to have to actually launch another podcast. So we'll have to log out of this and into the other. But I was going to say about weather. Weather is also the most amazing metaphor. Weather, I've always sort of noticed the weather in landscape paintings. When you look at landscape paintings throughout history, the weather that's being portrayed in those paintings is always of the utmost importance in our interpretation of what's happening in those scenes. And then, there's always just your internal weather, like how you are, like, are you sunny? Are you having a rainy day? Sometimes our weather is linked to what's going on outside, and sometimes it's not. But anyway, I think asking about the weather is always actually a super interesting question. So for those of you just joining us, I have to say, so Alan is actually sunny in South Wales. So he is in sunny South Wales. That's really nice to hear. There's been crazy weather going on in the US right now, which I follow because my people are all around the US. And there's been hurricane season in the South, and there's been repercussions up the East Coast, and states of emergency in New Jersey and New York and other places too, I believe. And a friend of mine posted a photograph of his garage and his workspace that was like thigh deep in water. It was just, that happened in a matter of hours. So it's just hard to imagine. Always live on a hill, I would say. I think we're not going to be able to build hills high enough at the rate that everything's going. So So, Alan, how is your summer going? Now, well, actually, now summer's kind of winding down. How's your summer been? Um, and anyway, I guess I let me check my email and see if I've heard from Rachel. She is okay. She's running around. She's trying to see if she can do this from her phone. She needs 6 or 7 more minutes. If that works, yes, that works. I'm going to say stand by. So actually, great. So I'm emailing Rachel's manager and just we're going to make this work. I think that that's just sort of the there. So for those of you just tuning in, Rachel is in New York and they're in a state of emergency and she's running around. She lost internet access at home. She's been out looking for internet access. Now she's trying to log in on her phone. So it should take a couple of minutes, but I am positive she's going to be here shortly. I was just saying how this is the first live stream and will be a podcast of season 2 of the Hannah Judson Beat. This is a podcast that I've been doing for a year. And it's been an amazing experience because I have reached out to my friends and then to my friends' friends and then to people I didn't really even know, but I just really admired. And so one conversation has led to the next. And it's just been an amazing thing to do during lockdown. And it's been an amazing thing to do just in general, just in terms of learning from other people and having conversations where actually I try to not talk too much. I try to let the other person talk. I try to ask good questions. And I've learned a lot about that, about not preparing too many questions and just letting my curiosity from their responses lead to the next question. Alan says, summer's been great. It's nice to be working again. Actually went to a gig last Friday, the first one since November 2019. So Alan, I saw your photos on Facebook. It looked like it looked great. Just, it looked like life, normal life again, to see a beautiful stage and musicians and lights and people. So who did you see? It was, what was the name of the group or the act or the event? So for the rest of you joining us right now, we're in a holding pattern right now. We're waiting for Rachael Sage to join us from New York, which is in a state of emergency, and she doesn't have internet access at home. She's trying to find other ways to log into this conversation. If after a few minutes, if it doesn't work out, we'll reschedule, but I'm kind of hoping not to. I was super psyched. So Rachael was my first guest in January of this year. And we had a great conversation, and that was great. And it's just turned out, as it's turned out through a variety of conversations, she's my first guest of season 2. And that is because she's releasing a record in October, and I look forward to her coming here and talking about it rather than me talking about it. Although one thing that we can do is look at a video from a record. Do you guys want to do that? So this is like, even without Rachael being here, we can sort of start the conversation. I think we can do that. A little bit of pre-work. So we're going to watch a video that is really cool. So the little bit that I know about Poetica, then Rachel's next project, is that she was working it's a lot about poetry and spoken word and music also. And so this is a video. It's called Thanksgiving, and it's one of the tracks on her record release coming up, Poetica. And I'm going to share it with you, and we'll see how this goes. So this is Thanksgiving by Rachael Sage. Okay, so I hope you were able to see that. Were you able to see? Oh, nothing coming through. Oh, shoot. So that didn't work. So I was sharing my live screen. Well, that's too bad. I'm going to share with you. I'm going to share with you the link. So I was able to watch it. I wonder why that didn't work. There's a tool here for sharing streams. Okay. I'm going to quickly grab the link again so that you can have it. Sorry about that blip. So you've had time to run and get a drink, coffee, a little glass of wine. Thanks. Oh, here it is. Okay. Here it is. All right. So that was actually while you guys were watching. I'm not sure what you were seeing on your screen. I was watching. Oh, you could see me. That's hilarious. It was super. It's wonderful. It reminds me of Laurie Anderson. If you're familiar with her work, there were definitely. Rachel's here. Hey.
Thank you for playing. I'm so sorry, but we've had internet issues since the big storm.
Yeah, I know. So, well, first of all, welcome and thank you so much for making the effort, going around and knocking on doors. Can I borrow your internet?
Beautiful. It's great to see your face.
Yes, so do you. I'm really
what time is it there, Hannah?
So it's 6 p.m. It's 6:16 right now.
Bonsoir.
So, bonsoir à toi aussi. So I've been talking the whole time that you were actively getting logged on, and I was talking about a lot of things. But one thing I just tried to do was share the video of Thanksgiving, which I was able to watch, but the share tool didn't work. However, what I saw was fantastic.
That's nice to hear.
Yeah, it was wonderful. And I was everybody could see me listening to it.
Well, I can share another visual just to make up for it. And your viewers can be the very first to see my new Poetica album. Boom. Yay. There it is. It just arrived today. So
that's awesome.
This is the debut with you guys. Woohoo.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you for sharing that. So that just arrived. And so all I've heard is Thanksgiving. Can you talk a little bit more about?
Oh my goodness, we'll have to get you a link to the whole album. Yes, it is a 19-track spoken word musical cinematic soundscape with so many different genres. It's something I did impromptu under lockdown. I taught myself to engineer, and I just started file sharing with wonderful musicians all around the world. And I can safely say that working on this kept us all sane. And I feel like we created something quite new and innovative for us. So, I'm excited for people to hear it. And it's been described as Leonard Cohen meets Laurie Anderson.
Yeah. Absolutely. I was definitely feeling Laurie Anderson when I was just watching the video with this repeating circles and just the wonderful language and the way the language takes you to somewhere you might not have expected it to go, and it just pulls you along.
Every single track is very, very different stylistically. So it really is a bunch of little mini movies, and there's some ambient tracks and classical jazz, even a couple of Americana tinged tracks, because it was really about just serving the poetry and underscoring it in a way that didn't get in the way, but it just helped bring you in, hopefully.
So you are many things, including a writer, and you're probably writing all the time, or are you writing in spurts? How does your writing go?
It's pretty erratic, to be honest, but that's mainly because I'm just really, really busy, as I know
Yeah.
you are too. So maybe you have to, concertedly make an effort to carve time to write. That's how I
Yeah.
am. If I
Yeah.
don't, then I'll get a little inspiration now and then. But I think a lot of it is making sure not only your receiver is on, but
Yeah.
that you're home to answer the phone.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I got to write that down. But today
I've written new material in the last couple months, but really for the bulk of this year, I was just writing poetry.
Yeah.
So the songwriting kind of took a back seat to this new Poetica project, and now I'm, getting back to it.
So when you started your project, did you have a group of poems ready to go and then you started distributing them or talking about them? Or did it just sort of one idea lead to the next?
A little bit of everything. I had a group of 300 poems from which I was already attempting to call a poetry book, which is still in process. And I basically put that project aside, but took those poems, shared them with my longtime collaborator and musical genius, Dave Egar. And he actually helped me select the poems that ended up on the album. And I was so grateful and indebted to him for having the wherewithal and the patience to do that. I mean, it was an honor because it's not what he normally does, but he also does happen to be a very, well-educated, poetically minded person. Both of his parents were poetry professors, so he had that perspective. And also in the past, we have occasionally dabbled into this type of work more spontaneously on stage, where I would read a new poem and we would improvise, but we've never done a whole album like this. So it was quite an undertaking, but he was very patient with me, very encouraging. And then pretty quickly, it really opened up to include about a dozen other musicians from all over the country and even some from overseas. So it was a very communal and connective kind of undertaking during a very isolated time.
Yeah. So what a perfect anecdote to having to, isolate and then creating something that is like a planet. You created a whole,
And it was coming from more of a subconscious place in terms of the writing, because that's what my poetry really is. It's less crafted in the traditional sense, like my songwriting maybe. So I didn't always even know what each poem was about or remember if I'd written it before the pandemic. So these things would sort of unravel, and the music would also help inform a new meaning or what it would mean to me now as I was doing a fresh reading. So that was kind of interesting too, because of course that's one of the things I love most about poetry, is that it could mean one thing to one person, one thing to another, or even to yourself, through the course of a lifetime. So
yeah, absolutely.
A lot of projection.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got so many things I want to say, but I don't want to interrupt you. I was talking about that earlier. Also, I try not to interrupt. It's but
I'm
poetry.
Jewish, and we interrupt each other at the Seder table, so I'm comfortable with it.
Okay. Well, so the thing about poetry that is so magnificent is that it is different from lyrics. Poetry, lyrics serve one kind of activity. Poetry serves us in a different way. And I love poetry. Like I don't love most poetry, but when you hit a poem that you love, but you know it when you find it, that this thing opens up in front of you, and it's the world in a way that you've never understood it before. And I always say that, like, in my understanding of it, it's like songwriting. A good song tells the story in a new way, and a good poem illuminates the idea in a new way. Like it takes you. I mean, a good poem is the best teacher, I think. So.
My goodness, I love that, and that has been the case for me in innumerable ways, especially because as a budding young actress, I was very much immersed in Shakespeare, and obviously, he's the best teacher. So I learned not only about meter and, metaphor and nuance and all of that, but I was also relating to poetry as an actor and in terms of character, the emotional subtext, wit and comedy, it had everything in it. So it was both humbling, but also opened up a whole universe to me. And then by the time I got to high school and then college, I feel like I was kind of building on that in terms of the things that inspired me, poetically speaking. I remember when my mother, just threw a bunch of old poetry books she'd had from her college years, on my bed and was like, "You might like these, honey." And it was Lawrence Ferlinghetti and Ginsberg, and actually one of my distant uncles was a beat poet too. So I had all these different influences.
What's his name?
His name was Frankie Rios. Unfortunately, he passed away recently, but he was one of the original beat poets who lived on Venice Beach. And he did know all the New York guys too. And he had a lot of stories to tell. Did a lot of drugs too, but he overcame all of that. He recovered and was just, an amazing person to have in my family and to encourage me as a writer as well.
Wow, that's great. That's amazing.
People should look him up, Frankie Rios. He wrote several volumes of beautiful poems, and many of them were tributes to his muse, who was my aunt, Joyce. So that was very romantic.
Yeah. Oh, that's neat.
My poems are not always romantic, but his were.
Wow, that's very cool. I heard Allen Ginsberg read a couple of times in the 80s. Wow. And I bumped into him at some art galleries in Boston because he had a friend who was a photographer in Boston. I can't remember all the details. It was a while ago. But Allen Ginsberg, he was one of my first people to pull me in.
I actually live next door to a gallery, the La Mama Gallery, that now is inhabited by Howl, with an exclamation mark, the Howl organization. And they present all kinds of poetry and art events. Obviously, during the pandemic, it's been a bit, more interesting. But I do attend some of those, and it's just so cool to live next door to something that's tributing him all the time.
Oh, that's cool. That's really neat. So where are you right now? You're in New York.
Right now, I am in the East Village. During this lockdown time, I have been back and forth between Hudson Valley and Manhattan. I made my way upstate to, just kind of get away from the density factor for a while. And I love it so much that I'm, really living between both places now. I have family in New York, so I'll always be in New York sometimes. But I really, really love Hudson Valley and the nature. And so I'm enjoying that balance. The schlepping back and forth, not so much, but the balance of being able to walk in nature and really appreciate, space, and then to come back and be able to cheer on New York City, which of course is having a lot of struggles, but we're doing it. We're getting back to it. So.
Yeah. So that is what I would call a well-designed life, because those are the things I think about all the time. Like, how do you get what you need? Because it's not going to come from one place. You have to put the pieces together, and
probably not as an artist, right?
Yeah, no, but I
very short attention spans. So you need a lot of variety.
But I do find that I am very happy with nature and quiet spaces, maybe, and I don't know if it's an age thing, just getting older and being calmer, or I don't know, but I used to,
that, I'm sure.
It used to drive me nuts, but because I grew up in the countryside, but now I like having both. But East Village,
I bet it is an age thing. And also, I know we've known each other a while now, and you know my story that I am a cancer thriver. And sometimes when we've gone through an illness of that nature and confronted, the inevitable, we start to really wake up to the beauty of nature and balance and the calm that it can provide and how healing it can be. So I feel like the entire world now has had that experience together. So we all are a bit more attuned to, wanting a sense of balance. Whether or not we're achieving it yet, we know that we crave it and that it's something that's good for us.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. You know what you just said, it's like this world is going through such massive change, and we are going through either wake up calls or not, but we're going through an environmental situation and this pandemic, which both of those situations show us that we are globally totally connected to each other, that our little weather patterns in one region, we are sharing our weather patterns, and we are sharing our breath, and I think that there is I mean, that has to be a game changer for this, at least the kids coming up.
I think we have to keep projecting the notion that it should be, because not everybody is doing that. So I feel like artists particularly, are so conscious of that, because we've always been sharing ideas and resonance and music and, languages that defy, the rest of the way people speak. So it's, we are attuned to universality as a concept kind of innately. So we got to keep at it.
We do have to keep at it, because that is potentially the gift that comes out of this era. Mm-hmm. There would be other ones, I suppose, but I hope
too. We know that John Lennon was way ahead of his time, but I wish he was around right now to give us some new songs along the lines of Imagine. That's for sure. It's up to us, Hannah.
Yeah, we've got some work to do. Well, you are doing the work, and actually, I've got a question. So, your record just arrived to your studio, and I'm sure you have a bunch of things lined up for that. Mm-hmm. How will you be presenting your work live? What will that look like?
Yeah. Well, I actually just had my very first rehearsal a couple days ago with my new ensemble that will be performing with me as Poetica. Wow. And it was so exciting. I was really nervous, to be honest, because I hadn't played with a group in almost 2 years. And, you kind of wonder, am I going to forget how to do this? Am I going to forget how to communicate to a group of musicians and convey my ideas? I don't really make charts. I'm not, a notationally minded person. I sing things, I play things, I show, and kind of just give the essence of what I want. And the musicians that I pulled together were so brilliantly sensitive and immediately synced into what I was trying to bring out of us together. So they did their homework, they came prepared, and they're all great people. And it was just revelatory to play again with a group. So I'll tell you the ensemble. It's cello, violin, drums. I'm playing percussion and guitar.
Okay.
No piano this time. And I also have a harmonica player. So it's a nice eclectic ensemble.
Wow. And will there be projections?
That's a good question. Would you like there to be?
Well, that's what I'm visualizing.
Really? Okay, maybe you can direct the projections. All the way from Europe.
Did you see Laurie Anderson back in the day when she?
I've seen it online, and
I'm trying to remember which record. Yeah, I guess Big Science came out, and then I saw her after that.
Yeah,
but
I'm certainly not trying to emulate her, but I have great affection for multimedia. So maybe. I think part of it hinges on whether these gigs I booked are all going to stick, or whether some of them may have to be virtual. But certainly places like Joe's Pub in New York, that's outfitted for that kind of thing, will be able to do multimedia. Some of the other venues, the smaller places, it might be a little trickier. But I am also working on a visual art show that will be informed thematically by Poetica. So that's going to happen in November at my local gallery, Think, in the Village. And hopefully, I'll be able to have that photographed as well, and that can be incorporated.
So what is going to be in your art show?
Well, I'm working on the artwork now. Did you know I was a painter?
I did.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I should switch my rig, because my paintings are in front of me and not behind me. Oops.
Yeah.
But you can see a couple maybe like right there.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Yeah. That I recognize the.
But I did this still life themed photo shoot for my album artwork. I'm going to try to show just a little bit of it. So you saw the cover.
Yeah.
And then like the back cover, you can see there's a typewriter, and inside, I played with some objets d'art and put these lovely items together during lockdown in unusual ways. So I am hoping to create paintings that are inspired by the photo shoot that I art directed for this album. That's my concept.
The photo shoot, I did see some of the photographs that came out of your photo shoot, and I was thinking 1600s Dutch paintings. That's what with the
Okay.
With
a
the
little bit broader than that, but that was a touchstone for sure.
With the light and dark. I think it was the light was so important. But
absolutely. We only had one window with light streaming in. It was shot in a basement where I was renting upstate, and there was this kind of magical, decrepit concrete floor. And we just noticed, my collaborator and I, Tom Moore, that it had a life unto itself. And we found this crack in the floor that really reminded me of, that Leonard Cohen lyric about the light coming through the crack and all of that. So I didn't want to be too literal, but the crack is incorporated in a lot of the photos. And just
that's
that
neat.
idea of trying to find beauty in the darkness and jumping off from there. Every single prop I had in the house, I somehow arranged in a beatific way for this shoot.
Well, that one window of the light coming in, well, it does remind me again of Dutch 16th century painting of, what's his name? Vermeer, of the various things, but where the objects are so intensely illuminated from
I'm so happy to hear that, because we were playing with what we had. We had very strict limitations technically, as I did making the recording as well in GarageBand, but sometimes limitations really do push you to be more creative. And as we were looking at the shoot, and I did some filtering in Photoshop, I do a bit of graphic design. We were really struck by that. And we'd been aiming for that with the arrangement of the props and the still life approach, but we hadn't been quite as aware that the light was giving us that gift. So we were like fetching that there wasn't enough light. We're like, it's so dark. What am I going to do with this? And then meanwhile, like you said, definitely gave it a vibe.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, they're beautiful photographs. So that's cool.
Pass that along to Tom as well.
Yeah, that's nice. So you have set up some shows for sort of. Do you have a record release party coming up?
I do. My official record release in New York City is September 30th. And that will be at Rockwood Music Hall in New York City.
Lovely.
Love that place. Have you played there? Yeah.
Yes, in the smaller room.
Yes, which actually is my favorite room. It has the best acoustics. So we'll see how that all goes. Fingers crossed, all of that holds. Yeah. And then the rest of September and October are all scattered album release shows throughout the East Coast, and basically anywhere drivable. We are avoiding planes at this point.
Yeah, for sure.
But anywhere we can drive within 3 to 5 hours, we are definitely trying to get out there, bring the music to the people, and do it in a safe and respectful way, and encourage folks to come tested, masked, vaccinated. And just, let's take care of each other.
Yeah.
Enjoy our music.
Yeah, exactly. I do keep hoping for, we call it in our household a fluke. We're going to get a fluke. We need a fluke to come. And I hope that this can, and maybe the fluke can be just that the end is closer than we think. Maybe that would be a good fluke. But
amen to that.
Yeah.
And that's a song. You should write that song too. Maybe we could both write it and meet up and see how we did.
Oh yeah. Wait, the fluke song.
The end is close. What did you say?
That the end is closer than we think.
Yes. But like in a good way.
In a good way. The end of this thing, this thing we're in. I remember I spoke with you in January. You were my first guest in January. And that was like truly another era when we crossed over to the start of this year. It was quite a time that we lived through that was
Yes.
This conversation is happening at the end of the summer.
Mhm.
I don't know, it seems just like very different season that we're in. I
Yeah,
am
right.
feeling optimistic a little bit.
I think it's your nature and my nature to be optimistic. I'm
Yeah.
going to be so bold, but we also have these sensitive, melancholic tendencies. And I think in a lot of ways, as artists, it's impossible not to, be empaths, not to process what everyone around the
Yeah.
globe is feeling and expressing. So, I'm trying to not be as much about myself in this time, really, and yet also not lose myself. So I
Yeah.
feel like more than ever, I'm an antenna for what loved ones and friends and people all over the world are going through and feeling. And in a lot of ways, I feel like that's my job as an artist. So I am as optimistic as I can possibly be to try to uplift and encourage. And then I also like to be as informed as I can be. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on in the world, and also, in America and Texas and in New Orleans, lots of people going through rough times, obviously Afghanistan. So I have to find that balance between watching the news, knowing what's going on, and also taking care of myself and eating well and exercising. I don't know if you struggle with that balance, but it's so important.
Yeah, it is so important. Exactly what you just said about like taking care of yourself, the health, the mental health, but being aware of what's going on in the world is important. Why is it important? Like, why do we need to know?
Not everybody thinks it's important. I mean, I get into arguments about this with people. Not arguments, but people who tell me that I shouldn't worry about X, Y, Z, or I shouldn't pay attention to what's happening over here because it doesn't directly affect me. And people in my own extended family have made that case, especially when I've been in ill health. And I think there are times when that's very, very true, where, the adage that you're no good to anyone else if you're not taking care of yourself. It's so true. And you have to always start with yourself, start with what's inside. And that's also a very Buddhist, sentiment to make sure that, you're practicing what you're preaching. You're taking care of your own internal and immediate, world before you get overly ambitious. But I feel like there was a chunk of time over this past year where my pendulum swung, so far the other way, where it was about like, how many vitamins I was taking. Am I doing enough yoga? Am I getting all my steps in? Almost to the point where I felt more isolated because I wasn't connecting to the wider world. And it's what you said before about we're all breathing the same air and we're all impacted by the same environment. And, I don't want to be someone who forsakes others for myself. I'd rather try to find that balance on a daily basis and have that be a way of life. So that's always what I'm working on.
Yeah, that's really nicely said.
That's how I was raised, I guess, right?
Yeah. But it is a daily feat. Like it is something that you can't just say, I'm just this way and it's all going to work out or whatever. You do have to put some conscious effort into the balance, which is the word that you keep coming back, that you've said several times. And I do think
if I say it will happen.
Yes.
I say it enough times, I'll master that.
There's that metaphor and public announcement to put your mask on, your oxygen mask on before you help other people, before you put on the mask on. And I do think that there is, all across the board, you do have to take care of yourself. But I do think that we get to design how we take care of ourselves, that we do get to put, thought into it and what it's going to take. And then how do we take care of the world? And that's something that I think about not every minute, but I do think about it on a daily basis because I don't know how I will be taking care of the world. And I like what you were saying about being an artist and that the role is to be a receptor and to communicate ideas that are helpful.
Think about how many people feel disenfranchised ongoing because their voices aren't heard and their stories aren't told, So when I bring things back to that truism, it does help ground me and assure me that this path of being an artist is relevant, is helpful, and is worth pursuing.
Yeah.
Because, we all question it, especially in these times. Is this important anymore? Is it helpful? Is it enough? But I think it is. And I think,
definitely. I think it's absolutely. I think so. Definitely. I think
that cast a light on situations and human beings and scenarios in ways that are unique to the arts. So you're here.
Yeah, exactly. That is exactly. That's sort of my description of poetry, is that it is a casting an absolutely new light on things. And
you used the word design several times. Are you also a designer?
Yeah, I have. Yes, I am also. Okay. Yeah. Well, so that was exactly. So I got into graphic design early on, just after art school, as a way to make money, and it's just been the best skill to have throughout my life. So
I agree.
Yeah,
it saved me a lot of heartache knowing how to throw my own design stuff together, and I find it quite meditative. Actually, I really enjoy Photoshop and layout, and I enlist a wonderful designer to co-create with me on big projects, and he's brilliant. His name is Chris Kornman, and at this point we read each other's minds, but for many years I did it just myself, and it's like this rabbit hole of detail, and as someone who really relishes details, I enjoy it a lot.
Yeah. That's great. So you do a lot of different things. You paint, you write. I can relate to both of those things. You do graphic design, you write songs, you produce records, you make videos.
Occasionally.
What don't you do? What don't you do?
NLX actually created the recent video for Thanksgiving. And I don't know if you know her work.
No.
Her name is Natasha Alexandra, and she performs under the fabulous name NLX.
Okay.
And she collaborated with me on the visuals for the Thanksgiving lyric video. And I had seen some of her other work, and it reminded me so much of Yayoi Kusama. She had done something with polka dots and retro typography. And I just thought, this is for me. Let's do something. So I curated that, but she did all the heavy lifting. So credit to her.
So that's do you have other videos to accompany the record coming up?
We are working on some new ones. Yes, I'm going to be shooting 2 more at the end of September. And this full album release isn't till mid-October. So hopefully there's some time in there to edit everything, whip it all together. But I'm excited to capture some of the beauty of this new place I've embraced in upstate New York. That's going to be the backdrop. But I'm not going to center myself in any of this. The project is Poetica. It is a band concept project. And so it'll be interesting and a challenge to shoot some of these visuals that made it into the album. Yeah. And then also some of the natural surroundings upstate. So that's what I'm hoping to do.
When you are looking for venues for Poetica, are you approaching the same venues that you would with your singers, with your song music, with your singer-songwriter stuff and bands, or are there different venues that this fits into?
My goal is that there will absolutely be different venues that this fits into. I can see that. I already have that vision. Even as I was recording it, I had that vision. So, I could see this touring as Poetica, and it's a big show, and it has so many of the guests who played on it, and then there are new ones, and there are new pieces that continue to evolve and become a volume 2 and so on. And I could see this also in the jazz space, and even potentially, the new age space, which I haven't been that interested in the past, but there's so much crossover with that and cinematic soundtracks and ambient world music too. So I love the idea of there being a wider color palette continually, and that expanding more live, and maybe performing at places like Lincoln Center, things like that. So
yeah,
a bit more of a, I don't know how you would describe it, but it's more of a cross genre performative type of thing.
That's well described. Wonderful. So you've got a lot coming up. Like your to-do list is probably so long it trails into the invisible for yourself.
That's true. Yeah.
And so,
but, there are other things that ground me. I mean, I have family members who are dealing with health issues, and these are the things that kind of bring you back to earth and remind you, okay, yeah, I got to work on my press release, but I also need to pick up the phone and make sure this person's okay, and be present and listen. And I try to be a good human being as well as a decent artist. So I think the two things hopefully inform each other.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So when and where can people find your record?
Well, I have it now. So I'm going to put some copies in the Empress Records store. Actually, I think there may already it's there for pre-order. So if you go to poeticaproject.com, which is the new website for Poetica, and you click on merch, it'll take you right to the Poetica store at Empress Records. And we have albums, and we got vinyl, CDs. It's, of course, available for pre-order digitally. And what else? T-shirts, notebooks, Can
you tell me the URL again?
Poeticaproject.com. And if folks go to my website, rachelsage.com, of course, there's a link at the top that says Poetica, and that'll take you there too. So.
All right. I'm going to put all of your links into the chat area. So, all right, those are rolling in. So please do visit poeticaproject.com and also rachelsage.com and or empressrecords.com for all sorts of great browsing. Very cool. So I'm not keeping track of the time. I don't know if we've talked for
about 40-something minutes. Yeah,
I think so. Anything else you want to share with us? Like, can you describe what it looks like outside your window right now in New York? What's the weather?
I'm a little bit of a vampire, so my windows are closed. But I just came in from outside, and it is a gorgeous, sunny, restorative day after quite the over-the-top storm last night that did cause a lot of damage all around the metro area. So grateful for a day for the city to hopefully dry out and repair folks to do their very important work. And I was seeing that on my morning walk all over the city, Con Ed and all the folks fixing the electricity, and grateful to them, right?
Absolutely.
What they do.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just before this conversation, I was looking to see, I had been reading about New York, and I was looking to see, trying to find out what's happening right now. So I'm glad the sun is out and it's not raining. That's terrific.
I think folks are assessing their basement damage today.
For sure. Yeah,
I'm okay.
For sure.
Everything's good on my end.
Excellent. Glad to hear that. Well, thank you so much for making the double, triple effort to join me today. It was really nice to see you.
I love chatting with you, and thank you so much for doing what you do and presenting me on your fabulous show. So hopefully in the nearish future, you and I will get to share a stage together, because I know what kindred spirits we are. We had touched on maybe doing some stuff in France, and I felt like I wasn't quite ready for the international travel yet, but goddess willing,
absolutely.
Next year, let's do it, my friend.
Absolutely. So next week, I'm going to California to record my next record. And so I'm going to have a record coming up, and I'm starting to map out next steps for that. So
I'm going to make another record too this winter under my regular persona.
I wanted to know what was next.
But I already even have a title for it. I finished the writing, but you and I will be very much in sync, and we'll be finishing our albums for next
Excellent.
year.
So we'll definitely have to stay in touch about all of that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Hannah.
Yeah, my pleasure. It was so nice to talk with you. One final question. What is your superpower?
My superpower is I'm able to use color to make people feel happy every single day.
Yay. That's wonderful. That's excellent.
Yeah, I really think it is.
Yeah, that's very nice. So for those of you who joined us live, Alan and I saw Rob was here and Cyrus was here. Thank you guys so much for joining us live. There have been some others who have popped in and out. It was great to see you guys again. This was episode 1 of season 2 of the Hannah Judson Beat. And I look forward to seeing you all again. So see you guys later.
Bye.